Hey, what is going on, team? And welcome back to another edition of the Ask Matty Show. We're going to be covering your guys' questions today. You guys had questions about Velo, API 3, ZBEC, JASMY. We're going to be taking a look at all of those questions you guys have and answering those for you guys here. Before we get into today's show, know that we come from cryptocharge.com. We have a education platform. We go live Monday through Friday. We have a Discord community to ask questions. We have a coin library with comprehensive analysis and exit plans. Whole bunch of value there. Guys, with code YouTube, you guys can get 30 days free plus 50% off. So please come check it out. It's a great opportunity for you guys to really take your education to the next level. So let's go ahead and get into you guys' questions today. Obviously, a lot of volatility this last weekend in the market, but we're going to keep on keeping on here and get you guys updated on what's going on in the market. So first and foremost, we have Marcel Gias. I am also curious about Velo. What are your thoughts about Velo? So Velo, another finance solution out here. And, again, if you guys are really interested in a certain project breakdown, I need you guys to spam the hell out of the comments down there with that project name so that we can really, know that you guys want that attention there, and we will do the breakdown like we did with ZBEC. So let's go ahead and take a look here at the chart here for Velo. And again, when we look at some of the other factors, we bring in, for example, coin market cap, and we take out the market capitalization here so we can get a quick little look through on the value proposition here. So again, when I see market capitalization 50 million, 100 million, 200 million, 250 million, these are very small market capitalizations, and really allows for much greater growth with much less money required, right? You look at total supply or max supply is going to be 24 billion Velo, much smaller than a lot of other smaller caps out there that are around this market capitalization. And again, most of that supply is already going to be here on exchange or ready to change hands. So really not any huge, overhead hanging supply that we have to be worried about. So again, that's a quick snapshot there. Down here is the tool for both the website and the white paper. Those are things that you guys can click into and get after right away. Get lots of information on the website as well as the white paper. But the white paper is going to be more important for you guys to check out than just the website itself. So let's go ahead and do a little bit of analysis here though on the chart, right? We know that there's 24 billion times some of these prices here are going to be that market capitalization that's required to get to those prices. So obviously, what we're going to see on a lot of the charts here is, first of all, the some deviations of structure, and that's not necessarily that indication that it's going to be a permanent deviation, but like these sell-offs that we've had here recently, again on Friday, from that flash crash from Donald Trump coming out and waiting for the traditional markets to close, and then saying we're doing a 100% tariff on China, which we've seen tariff after tariff, and maybe the markets have some knee-jerk reactions, but nothing like we saw on Friday's action. So we saw some small deviations from what I would consider to be like, some of the more classic structures that we've seen in there. But when we're looking at the larger structure that's in play here, one of the big components that I see here is when we bring in like our curve tool here. This was a good indication that you finished some sort of major accumulative base over here from basically what's called March of 23 through May of 24. So this was a big accumulative base. You broke over it, over here in April. And since April, really what we've been doing here on Velo is building a new floor of support on top of that accumulative base that we broke over. So from a grander perspective, this is kind of what Zcash did, where you had just the huge rounded shape on a much more extended region. Had a little bit of choppiness and pullback, and you just saw it rocket for days and days and days. So that's what we're watching for here on Velo, is for that continuation. Although there's more traditional ways for handles to form, I do believe that this is still a handle to some extent here. And this generally will provide a very nice impulse to the upside. We have a big imbalance up here on Velo towards 28 cents. We also have a couple other areas of interest here that are a little bit more minor that we can look towards as like our next very short-term areas of interest. You had some consolidation over here in the like 5 to 7 cent range. So if you really wanted a short-term play, this is great support. We did dive down pretty close to this double bottom that was produced here in June of 24 as well as August of 24. So as long as we don't deviate below that, we still have a strong uptrend intact. So those are the areas of interest I'm watching for there on Velo. Again, to that 7 cent area is about a 5-6x in current market. And to that 28 cent area is going to be about a 26x. And of course, there's other smaller area pockets that we can look up here that can maybe provide us a little bit more interest as far as like those super long targets. But when you start to see these types of multiples, we don't want to get greedy with that. Okay. So again, if you guys want a project breakdown on Velo, please spam the comments with Velo please or Velo project breakdown. So I know it's something you guys want on a more grand scale. Let's go ahead and move on to the next question here. We have from FIA25. Thank you guys so very much for putting Zcash on my radar back in February of 2024. Let's go. So thank you so much for, first of all, being with us for so long, following our content. It means a lot. You've been championing API 3. Where's the best price to get into API 3 at current market? Thanks for all you do in the crypto space. Really appreciate that. I know that some of these projects, that we bring on, and especially some of the old ones, or maybe the ones that aren't like focused on current narrative as far as whatever that means in the cycle. I know that those are, projects that maybe at the time don't seem as sexy, but then you start to see some of the rewards for paying attention to those sectors or undervalued opportunities. And they truly do breed some of the biggest rewards. So let's go and take a look here at API 3. It's an Oracle. It runs on the Ethereum network. It's an ERC20 token. And let's strip the chart down here. So, there are charts that have, a little bit different price history. So here we have the KuCoin chart. If we roll back here, get a little bit more history here on the aggregated chart, but it's pretty much the same. So one of the things we're going to look at here is, first of all, when you look at where API 3 has been, and again, people will look at where we are compared to the previous all-time high, and they'll determine, oh yeah, this is a good project, bad project. We're never getting to XYZ price again. But when we look at these pockets up in here, and we look at how much liquid price action was done in these pockets. So first of all, here on API 3, you guys can see that there is a huge liquidity zone. I'm going to grab the top of that zone. So you have like an upper band of liquidity there, and you have like a lower band of liquidity here on API 3. So that lower band is somewhere between like $2 and $2.80, and the upper bound of that liquidity is like $8 and then $9. You also have a pivot zone that kind of slices this thing in half and kind of shows where that momentum shift is, and that's going to be around like that 440, 450 mark. And this whole pocket really hasn't been manipulated. In fact, the last time that we really even came up anywhere close to touching these liquidity pocket was back here in February of 2024. What we actually did in this instance is we took a little bit of a trim on API 3. I sold about 20% of my API 3 into this pump because I knew that this was a area that hadn't been mitigated by market makers yet. We came back, we manipulated that, and we did end up coming down and setting some new lows. Now, when we look at the new bands of support that are in here, right, and the kind of the areas we've been having a little bit of trouble with as of late, this is going to be our new liquidity pocket that we're focusing on right now. So the reason I brought these up is because I think that at the minimum, even if API 3 doesn't, want to come out and set new all-time highs, which I don't think is the case, all this $7.80 region, $9.40 region should really be touched at least once or twice before we see more downside, if that is going to be the case, which I do think we're going to set new all-time highs here on API 3. So we're underneath this like 88 cent to 99 cent, let's just call it a dollar region. Underneath the dollar, just from the grand scale, is a really good deal. If we didn't have this crazy wick here that took us to 42 cents, again, from just Trump getting on, True Social and you're running in his mouth after the markets closed, manipulating the markets, we would have probably just maintained this like 50 cent floor here, give or take. So if you wanted to set a limit, I would probably target somewhere around like the 60 cent region. That would be a really great spot to maybe set a limit, but anything under this dollar region is a good DCA. I would really just encourage a daily DCA at this point, instead of trying to like catch the bottom or try to, squeeze a few extra pennies out of this. But this is really the spot where you're going to get that best value down there. If we break all of this down and we take in our Fibonacci, you guys can grab a couple of ranges here, swing high, swing low. I really don't want to use this wick, but we're going to use it anyway. We're getting around $16 as our high there, which is still the target that we've had in place there as that next area of interest, right? So again, we have a very small market capitalization for API 3, just, a couple $1 billion can get us very far. From current market to that $16 mark is about a 22x opportunity. So again, not telling you guys everything goes up in a straight line the same way that Zcash did, but like you mentioned, there's always going to be projects that people ignore until you start breaking over 2 or 3 key resistance levels, and then it just seems like a no-brainer. So really, once that we see API 3 comfortably sitting back above $1 again, we have a lot of opportunity to start challenging the other liquidity pockets that we mentioned there. Okay, let's move on to the next question here we have from Atlantic Living. I think you've been on our TikTok lives a few times here, so appreciate you leaving some comments. Maddie, should we be swapping Casper for ZBEC? Absolutely love the breakdown in ZBCN. Would like to see more. Awesome. So, it's a tough thing for me to advise on because I, first of all, can't offer you guys financial advice, and everyone has different, risk tolerances, and everyone has different goals and allocations. And should I swap this for this? And it's a very, very difficult question to answer. If you are looking at your portfolio, excuse me, team. Need a quick sip of water there. If you're looking at your portfolio and you see that there is imbalance or something that's too heavily weighted, right? So let's say you looked at the Casper idea and at the time you looked at the price targets or whatever and you felt really good about it, and now you feel like you're a little too heavy and you wish you had a little bit more exposure elsewhere. It's okay to maybe consider reducing certain exposure and reallocating some of that exposure somewhere else. But playing the game of hopping around and trying to time that perfect next move is really just never going to happen, right? If you had sold all of your Zcash to chase XYZ, if you had sold all of your XRP to chase XYZ, you would have missed out on some of those rewards, but instead of just being patient. So Again, they're very different protocols. They have different proposition values. For me, still the upgradable smart contracts with Casper is a huge deal. I've done a lot of presentations here on the fundamentals of Casper. We've had Michael Sawyer on the show many times to kind of give you guys a little bit more insight there. It's something that I've researched very, very well. And current price action is really, I don't think, indicative of that quality. So I'm going to go ahead and just keep all of my Casper exposure. Again, I'm earning 15% APY in the native pool right now, so continuing to earn that. So maybe you're looking at it and you're like, hey, I'd like to sell some of my staking rewards and move that to ZBCN. Not the end of the world, right? Not a terrible thing to consider, but I wouldn't just say, let's jump to this because you did a breakdown on this and it sounds really good. If you go and you watch my initial presentation on Casper, you'd probably feel the same way, right? It's sometimes just that new and shiny thing feels a little bit better. Same thing when you get into a rental car or whatever, right? Like you're like, man, my car sucks, but the reality is it's just a car that you haven't been driving. Let's go ahead and move on to the last question. So last question here is going to be JASMY breakdown, please. So guys, again, if you guys want to see a project breakdown, I appreciate you guys letting me know what you guys do want to see, but I need to see a little bit more group crowd here, right? As far as what you guys want to see. So mention both Velo and JASMY. So in the comments below, let me guys know if you would rather see Velo or JASMY. And if we see more comments on one or the other, that will be our next breakdown. So JASMY is focused on decentralized storage. Kind of like Arweave, kind of like Filecoin. But let's go ahead and take a look here at the price chart just so we can give you guys a little bit of price action to leave you off with before we finish up the show. So let's go ahead and remove all this here. And let's go ahead and take a look at the technicals as far as what's going on here. So again, bad market timing here for JASMY, right? This is just bad market timing. This is not, hey, JASMY was a terrible project and nobody cared about it. Nobody wanted to build on the blockchain, right? You launch at the end of a bull market, you're going to see just some really, really natural selling that has nothing to do with people's interest or token ownership or any of that stuff. So we actually set our liquid high here in November of 21. So that's going to be between like the 22 and 30 cent region in here. That's going to be our high. You guys can see that we finally created a strong accumulative base in there. So created a distribution in here, started to create this base, you drop below, you set new lows, finally broke up. And you actually backtested it over here in April. This wick obviously deviated and dug its heels back down into that region in here, but closed our daily candles well above that. So that's something interesting. Again, when you see some of these liquidation events and some of them still just manipulate the same zones very briefly and then come back, we can see that it's a very strong accumulation zone for the most part. So really above this like 0.007 region of interest is going to be an area where you're going to want to see support be maintained. We also have our resistance levels up in here. So between 2.6 and 4 cents is going to be major resistance that we need to get back over. As far as imbalances go, there is imbalance up here. So between 7 cents and 13 cents is going to be a big imbalance that we're going to watch for. So go from current market up into those levels, about a 600% move, upwards of a 1200% move towards that like 7 to 13 cent region, which is definitely good ROI. Take all this away, bring in a Fibonacci retracement tool here. You guys can see that, again, the 8 cent region is going to be a good imbalance here. If you were to be looking at the new all-time highs, you'd be looking towards 53 cents to upwards of $1.40. So maybe upwards of like a 50x if you got up to these crazy areas of interest. Again, you need to look at market capitalization. You always want to take that total circulating supply and you want to multiply it by this target area of interest and look to see how much money is required to make that happen, right? If it's, let's say, 3, 4, 5, 6 billion, yeah, probably pretty reasonable. If we're starting to talk about 500 billion, $1 trillion to make that happen, probably unrealistic, even with rotational activity. Okay. So that's what we're watching for there, guys. Again, I apologize for a little bit of a congestion today, feeling a little bit under the weather, but still wanted to get back to you guys this week because we already had Monday off this week. So again, want to make sure that we're orienting these shows for you guys. So if you guys want to see a Velo breakdown, let me know in the comments about Velo. If you'd rather it be a JASMY breakdown, let me know in the comments of JASMY. Hey, you know what? Neither of these are that exciting to me. We all would much rather see XYZ asset. Let me know what that is. Happy to bring you guys a project breakdown. So we're going to do one next week. No matter what, you guys decide which one it is. Otherwise, guys, have a great day. Catch you guys next week.